On this part, you are going to learn how to create a database seeder file, which is just a file that is used to add some default data to the database. For that, let's go to Visual Studio. In here, I'm going to add the seeder file in the client project because whenever I run this project, I want to check if I have some default data in the database, and then if not, I'm going to add some data. In here, I'll just go to the data folder, and then I'm just going to right click and create a class. I'm going to name this class either DB seeder or DB initializer. And I'm going to change this class from a normal class to a static one. And the reason why I'm creating this class as a static one instead of a normal one is because whenever I want to access the method within this class, I don't want to initialize a new object. Then down here, I'll just type public and then static. The method is going to be seed default data. And then I'm going to use in here the application builder interface, which defines a class that provides the mechanism to configure an application's request pipeline. So application builder and then application builder. Then the first thing that I'll do, I'll first create a scope for all the application services using then var service scope is equal to then application builder dot the application services dot create scope. Now inside the using, I'm going to get a reference of the appdb context service. So for that, I'll just type var db context is equal to and then service scope dot service provider. I'm going to get this service appdb context. And then by using this service, we're going to create some default users and also some default URLs. So for that, if I don't have any users, so db context dot users dot any. So if I don't have any users, so we have the exclamation mark in here, then we are going to add some users. So for that, I'll just type in here db context dot users dot add range. And then inside here, I'm going to add a new user. This is the namespace. I'm just going to remove it from here. And then just import it, which is going to be shortly.data.models. And here I'm going to define the properties. The first property is going to be the full name. And this is going to be my full name. Then I'm going to have the email address. And that is going to be, let's say, ervis@trupia.com. And then since we use the add range, what this means is that you can add multiple ones. But if you want to add a single user, then just use add and then just pass a single user. Now to pass this data to the database, you just use db context dot save changes method. So this is how you can add users, the same way we are going to also add the URLs, but let us clarify this section one more time. Now here in line 10, where we have this create scope method, what the create scope is that is a method that's provided by the application services, which is then the application builder interface. It creates a new scope within the application service provider. Now scopes are used to manage the lifetime of objects which are registered with the dependency injection container. Now the dependency injection container is basically the place where all these services are configured. And so far we have just a single service, which is the appdb context. And if you can see all the configured container services, if you just go to program.cs, whatever you have in here, builder.services and then .add something, that means that that service is part of the container and it can be used in here. And then in here, since I have a reference of the app.db context, I can simply use the users property in the DB context. So just right click in here and then pick definition. You can see that I'm using the users property, which is of type DB set user. And then to the users DB set, I'm adding a new user. And the save changes method does send the changes from the context to the database. Now let us do the same for the URL. So if the DB context dot URLs dot any, so if there are no URLs, what we are going to do is that we are going to add just a URL. So DB context dot URLs, then add. Let us see the properties. We'll just right click. We have the original link down here. Original link is equal to HTTPS, let's say, .NET. And then we have the short link is equal to, let's say, DNH. Number of clicks, going to be, let's say, 20. The user ID is optional. So if you want, you can just leave it empty. And then you have the date created, which I'm going to set to datetime.now, and I'll leave the date updated to now. Now I didn't add in here a user ID, but if you want, you can add a user ID. And the user ID in this case can be from the DB context .users. I want to get the first user and then the ID. So basically the whole idea is that you create the user in here and then you get that user and you use the ID of that user. Now this might be a little bit confusing in the beginning, but it's going to be clarified as we move to the next part. Let me just scroll up in here. Let's see what the issue is. And the issue is that I have a method in here. I have static and then the method name. Let us set the return is going to be just a void. So I'm not returning anything. It's just a void. Let us save the changes. Now to use this method, I'll just need to go to program.cs. I need to call dbinitializer.c default data and then pass as a parameter the application builder. Let's go in here. And then in here, I'll just scroll down just before the app run. Going to seed the database. I'm going to use the DB initializer, then seed default data, and then pass as a parameter the app, which up here has been defined as the application builder. And then pass as a parameter the app, add semicolon, and then run the project. You can see that the app ran successfully. What this means is that the initializer was also called. So let us just close the browser. I'll just go to the Server Explorer. And then I'm just going to refresh the tables. Let me just open the users, show table data. You can see that now I have a user. And then if I just open the URLs, you're going to see that I don't have a URL. Let me just go back to the initializer. And then you can see that in here we are adding the URL to the context, but we are not sending these changes to the database. And we said that after you add something to the context, to send the change to the database, you use dbcontext.savechanges method. Let us run the app one more time. The app ran successfully. I'm going to close the browser. I'll go in here to the Server Explorer. I'm going to just refresh the database. Right click on the URLs and then show table data. And then I'm just going to refresh the table. And you can see that I have some data in this table as well.